Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 73 of the Nurtured by Nature podcast. Today, I'm delighted to welcome back Elizabeth Glenn-Copeland, who previously joined me to share her amazing wisdom and some of her soulful poetry from her incredible book, Daring to Hope at the Cliff's Edge, Pangea's Dream Remembered, in episode 35. Elizabeth is currently on a UK and Europe tour with her amazing composer husband, Beverley Glenn-Copeland. And if you have the opportunity to see them live, then I highly recommend it. They also have a beautiful new album called Laughter in Summer, which is available for pre-order on the links in the show notes, and which Elizabeth shares a small snippet of one of the songs with us in this episode. Today we have come together to honour the incredible legacy of one of Elizabeth's cherished mentors, Joanna Macy, an environmental activist, author and scholar of Buddhism, general systems theory and deep ecology, who sadly transitioned from this world in July 2025. Elizabeth guides us with poetry and gentle compassion to explore some of the principles of the work that reconnects, which Joanna created as the groundbreaking framework for the personal and social change that helps people take the despair and apathy we feel in the face of the challenges we see in the world and transform it into constructive, collaborative action. From gratitude to honouring the pain we witness in ourselves and the world around us, to finding a new story and vision to hold as we move forward and write the future for the earth and humanity that we want to bring into being. Remember, hope is a verb. It is meant to be active, not passive. It is a practice that we must tend daily to cultivate the change we want to see in our world. Well, welcome, Elizabeth. It's lovely to have you back with us on the Nurtured by Nature podcast. It's been a while. I think you were with me back in episode 35, which was almost 18 months ago, and we had a fantastic discussion about your amazing book, Daring to Hope at the Cliff's Edge, which I would encourage people, if you haven't had a chance to listen, to go back to, because it was filled with beautiful wisdom and some of Elizabeth's lovely poetry as well. But we're back here today, well, to share more of Elizabeth's wisdom with you, and also to honour a dear mentor of Elizabeth's and many people who are in the environmental activism space, which is Joanna Macy, who very sadly passed away a little bit earlier this year in July, but had a profound impact, and I'm sure her impact will continue. Her legacy will be great and far-reaching. So we're also going to touch on some of the work that Elizabeth did with her. But Elizabeth, it's lovely to have you back at this time and to have you share some more wisdom with us. I don't know if you have would like to get us started with how you came across Joanna's work, perhaps.
Yes, indeed. So I have been an artist whose career has evolved sort of at the intersection of art and activism. I think I can say I became an activist around the time I was 6. I have always seen the push for destruction of the beautiful mother that we live on. And so many activists will tell you that often we encounter like long periods of burnout where it just, for me, there was periods where I just fell into despair and I thought, why are we not getting this? Why are our leaders not getting this? Why are people not rising up when we have so much power with the number of us? So I had a period of deep burnout in 2018. It was around the time that a series of glaciers started to melt that climate scientists had not predicted would melt for another 70 years. And I remember thinking, okay, surely people are going to get this now.
Yeah.
But of course, the push in market capitalism to keep us shopping and kind of stupid and in a bit of a trance continued. And it was about the time that I got the writing residency at the Joggins Fossil Institute, from which evolved my book, Daring to Hope at the Cliff's Edge. So I went into that residency with this deep question of, does anything I say or do matter. In these times of malevolence, market malevolence, does anything I say or do matter? And it was around that time that I took a class at Mount Allison University, and the professor introduced me to this amazing book, Active Hope: How to Face the Mess We're In Without Going Crazy, by Joanna Macy, Chris Johnstone. So I dove into the book and began to study, and I took her work into that residency. And I don't know that without this work, the book that evolved from the residency would have been anywhere near what it was in terms of the depth that I explore. So Joanna reminds us that hope is a verb, right? Hope is an active thing. Hope is a practice. And in this book, she breaks down how we can activate this practice in our lives and with the collectives with which we're involved and with each other. And it is, of course, through one of these collectives that I met you, Fiona, through the rewilding movement.
Yeah, I think it's so important, isn't it, that at this time in particular, that there is, I mean, you said it was sort of 7 years ago that you were sitting in this space, and I think in some ways we're sitting in even a worse space, which seems impossible, that we've why aren't we shaken awake yet? And we're in the big shake, I think, at the moment, aren't we? With everything that's coming at us. And I loved when we spoke originally about this idea of active hope, because I think so many of us do find ourselves in that realm of despair, whether it's from the environmental impacts that we're witnessing, or even right now a lot of the real social justice issues that we're seeing at home, further afield around the world, that are leading people to just feel this utter despair and sort of desperation. We're desperate for change, and it's like, but how do we facilitate that? And I think within ourselves as well as within the collective. And that's what Joanna's work is so beautiful, isn't it? Is that it is about a personal journey as well as a collective journey.
Yes, and in fact, she stresses in the book and in her teachings, and she's a brilliant eco-Buddhist philosopher, systems thinker, that we have immense power in our collective. And she encourages us to think of power as not the way power is enacted in market capitalism, which is power over other people, but our power with, our power with ourselves, within ourselves, our power with others. And it is in this collective that we came up. I mean, for the first 200,000 years, we were pretty understanding of the fact that the only way we would survive was with our collective strengths, with each other. So, can I share a poem that Joanna liked to read?
Oh, yes, please. That'd be lovely. I'd love that.
So this poem. So Joanna was a huge fan of the work of the poet Rainer Maria Rilke, who was certainly a prophet in his time. And this was, she published a book called A Year with Rilke. She edited his work with Anita Barrows. And this is one of the poems that she liked to share and that I go back to at times when I'm feeling like I need some inspiration.
Yeah.
It's called Let This Darkness Be a Bell Tower. Quiet friend who has come so far, feel how your breathing makes more space around you. Let this darkness be a bell tower, and you the bell. As you ring, what batters you becomes your strength. Move back and forth into the change. What is it like this intensity of pain. If the drink is bitter, turn yourself into wine. In this uncomfortable, uncontainable night, be the mystery at the crossroads of your senses, the meaning discovered there. And if the world has ceased to hear you, say to the silent earth, I flow. To the rushing water, speak, I am. So let this darkness be a bell tower. That comes from Rilke's Sonnets to Orpheus, too. Can I share a little bit, Fiona, about the work that reconnects?
Yeah, I would love that, Elizabeth. I think because you were involved, I mean, it's one of Joanna's quite well-known programs, isn't it? The Work That Reconnects, that has universal appeal, people all around the world that are involved with it. And yeah, it'd be lovely to share that with people as a way that, I mean, this is the beautiful thing about Joanna, is although she has passed from her physical form with us, she has left this beautiful legacy that all of us can draw upon as we move forward during these times. And the Work That Reconnects is really one of the foundational pieces that we can utilize, and I think we all need as we face these challenging times at the moment. So it would be lovely for you to share some more of that.
I think it was the poet, I think it was Henry David Thoreau, that said, a thing done well is done forever.
Yeah.
A thing done well is done forever. And that is certainly evidenced by the legacy that Joanna and her people, right? She worked with a large team of people, and she would want them acknowledged too. Chris Johnstone, Molly Brown. So a thing done well is done forever. So I'm just going to do a little sort of summary of the Work That Reconnects. So she talks in the Work That Reconnects about the three stories of our time. And I think most of us will understand what story we're connected to as you listen to these. So the first story is the story of business as usual, which assumes that economic growth is essential for prosperity and growth is never ending. And of course, those of us in the environmental movement know that that is never part of life. Like life is a series of birth and death and birth and death and life and decay and life and decay. But business as usual assumes we keep growing and growing and growing. Doesn't happen in the natural world. It assumes that nature is a dead commodity to be used for human purposes, and that the earth will provide us with endless resources. The central plot in the business as usual story is that the individual gets ahead. So it's about that old story of the one. The individual gets ahead. There's no room for the collective in that story. It also assumes that the problems of other people in other nations or other species are not our concern. So I'm sure we can see there. Most people are stuck in the business as usual.
Yeah.
It's going to carry on as if none of this is happening. The second story is a story that many of us who feel defeated at times get caught into, which is the story of the great unraveling. This story assumes the economy is just going to continue to decline. Resources are going to continue to be depleted. The climate crisis is unstoppable, and there will be continued social division with war and the rise in fascism and mass extinction of species. So the story of the great unraveling assumes there's no hope, we're done. Let's just go out and have a beer and keep shopping, right? So nothing we do matters. Talk to a lot of people who sit across from me and go, well, nothing I do matters. So why? It's like, If 10,000 people think that, then nothing will happen. If 10,000 people think what I do matter and join with those other groups, then okay. So that's the second story. So this is the story that Joanna is encouraging us. It's called the story of the great turning. This is the lesser known of all the stories. So the great turning assumes that commitment to collectively act for the sake of what environmentalist Paul Hawken calls the largest movement towards environmental and social justice in history. If we engage in this fight with vision and courage and solidarity, that things can happen that we would have never imagined. Never imagined. So much in the world, isn't there, Fiona? There's so much mystery. We don't know how the bumblebee flies, right? There are things we don't know. Things can happen that we can't imagine if we make this commitment. And there are 3 dimensions to this story of the Great Turn. The first one is to protect what is left. And that is essentially what you and I came together with the rewilding movement. If you have a 2x2 plot of ground in the front of your apartment building and you can make a mini habitat there, do it.
Yeah.
Right. So protect what is left. And there are many movements around the world where people are doing that. So we don't hear about this stuff on the news. They're not going to tell us this on CNN or Guardian, but they don't want us to think that there is actually any hope. The second dimension is to work with others to create life-sustaining systems and practices. And the third dimension, and this is where we come into the core of Joanna's eco-Buddhist activism, is shifts in consciousness. Joanna said this, and I love watching her say this. She said, because the truth is speaking in the work, it unlocks the heart. It looks bleak. Big deal. It looks bleak, right? So don't lose our sense of adventure. Don't lose our sense of hope because it looks bad. Does it look bad? Yes. Are we at a critical juncture? Yes. But don't let that stop us. So she talks about practices, and we talked earlier about the importance of honoring our pain.
Yeah, very
so
important.
Being in a place of hope doesn't mean we're surfing over our pain. When a friend of ours dies, we would consider it really bad form to go, oh, well, they're dead now. See you later, right? We mourn them, we join with others who love them to mourn them. So when I drive by a clear cut, I pull over and I mourn that with the earth, the loss of the homes, of the habitat. So we have to honor our pain. We can't access the courage and the joy we need to go forward if we don't make space for the immense pain of what we see and feel and hear every day on the planet right now. It takes every bit of our spiritual courage to maintain equanimity in these times. It's not an easy thing. We are in the time of a crucible here. The second thing is to really make sure every day we look for what is here right now in my world that I can actively be grateful for.
Yeah.
Sometimes
beautiful.
that's hard.
Yeah.
But I'm sitting here looking at a rose of Sharon, and there's a beautiful pink flower there. And I bet if I went closer, there might be a little bumblebee in there with his little bum covered in pollen. So to look up, look at the sky, look up. Don't look down at your device. There's nothing there. There's no connection there. There's just AI BS. There's nothing there. Look up, look out, look into the eyes of people that you meet, right? Share the reality, share the pain, share the joy. And there's great gratitude in sharing that with others. And Joanna, of course, as a Buddhist, myself and my husband are also practicing Buddhists. You have to have some kind of daily practice.
Yeah.
Because our brains are hardwired to always see the negative. that supported us back in the day when we had to remember where the bear cave was or the snake pit. But right now it can take us out so fast, we can be down that rabbit hole and lost. So a daily practice, so that might be a writing practice, a dance practice, a mindfulness practice, a yoga practice, but some daily practice that brings you back to the breath, to that sense of, here I am, standing on the green grass. Some beautiful little birds over there at my bird feeder. So a daily practice.
I think I know there's more to it there, Elizabeth, but I just think that's a really important point to just dwell on for a moment, because I think in our current society, and I'm talking of, predominantly the Western world here, we have been fed, another story, like the stories we choose, which is goes back to what you were saying earlier, is we have been fed this narrative that we don't have enough time and we're really busy and life is hectic, and we've been given these devices which are fabulous tools. They're allowing you and I to speak at this moment, but they also have become almost our daily practice as well. How many people can say they get lost in the scrolling on social media. They get lost in, even, the TV and the entertainment that we're being shown, and it's 24/7. I mean, it's strange to reflect. I'm only in my 40s, but I look back to my childhood and it's like, when a series was on TV, you'd get an episode a week, and now you get the box set in one go. And there's this this need to just have these moments where we step outside this collective story that we have of not having time, being mindful, which is a word that's used a lot, but in this sense, just being aware, I think perhaps is better, of where we are spending our time. And if we can, when you mention a practice, sometimes people find that might be overwhelming, but even if you can start with 5 minutes, just bringing that back and letting it grow is that's the start. It's taking that first step. Find yourself, carve out that 5 minutes of important intention where you come back to yourself and you come back to the world. And I love your gratitude. You mentioned your rose. I just looked up at where I am and I've got a little ladybird bug that has come in. The seasons are changing here, and they've come out of, it's got a little bit cold and damp today, and they've obviously found their way in, thinking about where they're going to spend the winter, and they're more than welcome in here. But it is looking up, isn't it? I think we're very much and it's a physical thing as well, when we're in despair and depression, our bodies reflect that. You sort of hunch over, you stare at the floor, you don't look up because it doesn't feel manageable to you. So you want to control the little bit that's around you that feels manageable. And actually, it's important that we look up and we look to the horizon, we look around us and we become more aware. And these wonderful practices that you mentioned, whether they're spiritual and religious led, or whether they're more just, there's breath work has become very popular. There's lots of breathing exercises that you can be guided to do, and just having that moment to just sit and dwell and feeling some gratitude for something, however small it is. It's just that little seed to start with, isn't it?
Yes. I'm reflecting on what you were just saying, Fiona, about looking up. I recently read a book called The Power of Awe. And in the book, he talks about the fact that most of us, particularly now because of our devices, spend so much time looking down.
Yeah.
He said there's a reason in most spiritual practices, when you chant or pray or, take a moment to be grateful to the Creator, we look up. It actually changes something in our brain.
Yeah.
When we look up. It invokes a sense of presence and awe without which we are doomed. I think it's important also to remember that sometimes we look down and we hunch over. It's an effort sometimes to protect our tender hearts, which really are hurt. So that's a good thing. It's a good thing to protect our tender hearts, but rather than hunching over and doom scrolling or looking for your dopamine hit from what's on the little screen in front of you, to let the chest open, to let the breath drop, and to put your hand on your heart, and just as you would to a friend who was in pain, I know, it's hard. It's really, I know it hurts. It hurts. And look up and breathe. I know it hurts. Now, it doesn't have to be a big formal practice. Sometimes you can just take 2 minutes a day to just put your hand on your heart, slow your breath, breathe down into your belly, rub your heart and say, I know it's hard, but I'm here. I'm here with you. And let the mother speak to you. If you love Joanna, my guess is she would want to speak to you. Let her speak to you. Sometimes I go to one of my favorite poets, Dr. Maya Angelou, and I just listen to what would Maya say to me now? How would Maya hold her dignity? How would she hold her nobility? I know it's hard. Because it is. And yet, these are the times we're in. There's a line in Tolkien's book where the character is talking to Gandalf and says, he's found the ring. He knows he needs to take the ring back and throw it there. And he has to face this incredibly painful journey. And he said, I wish none of this had ever happened. And wise Gandalf says, so do all who are born in such times. But that is not our choice to make. We don't have a choice that we're here. We do have a choice. Do we look at it as an adventure? This is what Joanna encouraged us. This is a mighty and difficult adventure. And with others, we can walk this path and not be taken out.
Yeah.
I mean, she has a poem in here that she wrote called Trusting the Spiral. She says, active hope is not wishful thinking. It is not waiting to be rescued by the Lone Ranger or by some savior. It is waking up to the beauty of life on whose behalf we can act. We belong to this world. The web of life is calling us forth at this time to play our part. None of what we need can be discovered in an armchair or without risk.
Yeah.
So we trust the spiral of life to show us a way that we may not be able to imagine. But yeah, let's get our head out. Let me share one more of these poems with, because this is another one that she shared that I love.
It's something that was so beautiful about our first conversation is the power of poetry to really speak to our hearts. It kind of bypasses our logical brain and how we like to get in our own way, and just speaks to a truer, deeper essence of ourselves. And I think that's the part that we need to awaken to at this time. So yes, I'd love you to share us another poem.
It is the power of art, right? Emily Dickinson said, tell the truth, but tell it slant.
Yeah.
So art takes us in kind of in a sideways way. So it's not about blabbing. It's not about information. It's about activating the depth of our humanity. So this is one of Rilke's poems called The Machine that Joanna loved. The machine endangers all we have. We allow it to rule instead of obey. To build the house, cut the stone sharp and fast. The carver's hand takes too long to feel its way. The machine never hesitates Or we might escape and its factories subside into silence. It thinks it's alive and does everything better. With equal resolve, it creates and destroys. But life holds mystery for us yet. In 100 places, we can still sense the source, a play of pure powers that, when you feel it, brings you to your knees. There are yet words that come near to the unsayable. And from crumbling stones, a new music to make a sacred dwelling in a place we cannot own.
It's just so, it's amazing in some ways, isn't it? Is that this teachings from Joanna have been in existence for decades and decades, and yet they are
Yes.
as true to us now as they were when they first sort of came into being for her. And I loved something that you said on the entrance to that poem, which was awakening to the depth of our own humanity. And that's really like what we need to do, isn't it? I think there is so much division in the world. There's so much polarization about, and this entrenched belief that we have to be right and someone else has to be wrong. And one of the beautiful
Yes.
things about the work that Joanna does and the way she approaches it is, very much centered on community and collaboration. And I mean, even in the UK at the moment, we're seeing a huge rise in, division and, you know, from and hate towards people. And it's trying to find this way to be passionate about something, to want to see change, but to come at it from a place of love and collaboration, and to move forward from that rather than at the expense of hating another and making them wrong, and realizing how we do that. And I think it's the way to hold both of those things, isn't it? To hold the passion about wanting change and therefore realizing that something is not optimal, rather than possibly wrong, but not optimal about how we're doing things, but also at the same time not making an enemy of the other people, realizing that they are a part of it and we need to value them as well.
It's the centrality of coming from a place of vision. So, what is our shared vision? If I'm working with a team of people and we have spent the time necessary to co-create and commit to that shared vision, then when we come upon places, well, where I don't quite agree with you there, we don't necessarily get thrown quite off track. It's like, okay, your view is this, my view is this. How does this relate to our vision? And let the vision be the guide.
Yeah.
Because this is where I see a lot of our really powerful movements are getting offside, right? Some powerful teacher has to fly to The Hague to give a lecture on why we need to pay attention to what's happening in the oceans. But of course, they're on a plane, and the plane has a great deal of pollution involved with it and capitalist profit making. The truth is, there's very little that we can be involved in this society that doesn't involve a level of violence. The best we can do is pick and choose what we do so that we can move toward a vision of creating a society that is not based primarily in violence. And it's a hard thing, but I think I see too many of us sort of on this side over here. I don't know if I like calling it the left, but those of us that are committing to building a socially and environmentally just world, getting caught in places, well, she thinks this, so therefore I can't work with her on that, or they think that. So how do we find, what is the big common vision. What is the big picture here?
Yeah.
And how do we hold compassion? So I look back at stories of, for instance, I remember back at the beginning of when Roe versus Wade was first passed, there were two women, two powerful women got together. One of them was pro-life, one of them was pro-choice, and showed us how to have a conversation and stay respectful and compassionate towards one another, even though they had an essential disagreement. But they did share a place of common purpose.
Yeah.
That they respected life. Both of them saw it in a different way, but they kept coming back to that. And I remember that interview, and I wish I could find it. I think it was back in the day then when I was a young woman. So
Yeah, that's the thing, isn't it? I think we've become so polarized that we're not, prepared. There's no opportunity to listen because we're so entrenched in, this is the only way. And it's, coming back to this idea that actually, we all have to listen. We all have to listen to ourselves. We all have to listen to the earth. We all have to evolve. And, there isn't necessarily right or wrong. There might be many roads to the same place. And it's about collaborating to all get there and keep that vision. I think that's really very important what you say. And then that comes back to Joanna's work, doesn't it? About, being aware of what the version of reality that we're choosing to support and uphold as well, and realizing that we do have a choice. That is the greatest point, is that we are here now, and whilst it is incredibly hard, it comes with responsibility. And I think that's a key thing as well for our society, is we have become so very much aligned with the interests of the individual, this idea of separation, that we often neglect our responsibility to the greater collective. And I think that's what many of us who are drawn into this sort of environmental scene, and I know over my time I've realized that the environmental and the social justice aspects are so intrinsically linked that you can't have one without the other. You can't be a proponent of a greater connection to the natural world without increasing your compassion and humanity for everyone that is here. And it just is finding this way forward of holding this vision and realizing that what we value, the energy we put behind that gives it strength, gives it power, and brings it more to life.
yes, absolutely. As you were speaking, I was thinking of some things that I've had some incredible teachers in my life, and I'm very grateful to them. One of my teachers used to remind me that no action is neutral. Nothing we do is neutral. Just as when a butterfly flaps her wings, the energy is felt across the world. Every choice we make has an outcome that affects ourselves and others. So, do we take the reflective time to make those choices? Because everything is urgent, it actually requires us to take more reflective time, not less.
Yeah.
I know that one of the things, same teacher also told me, she said, Elizabeth, the story is still being written. We are writing the story right now.
Yeah.
We are authors of the story. So what is the part you are writing? I know I spend a lot of time going back to my own pagan roots. My grandmother was an herbalist and taught me my respect for the living world and how medicines can be found if I know how to go out into the forest and forage around and look. That's one of the reasons I'm really looking forward. So we're coming over, crossing the pond. We're coming over your way because it will be a time for myself and my husband to stand on the land of our ancestors, where my grandmother and grandfather's people came from, where my father's people came from over in Wales, and for us both to be in Ireland, where my great grandmother was an Irish midwife, and
Oh, beautiful.
Glenn, of course, is African American, and most of the slave owners came from Africa. So he has a great grandmother that looks essentially like me, right? Who came out of slavery, but had white skin and red
Oh, wow.
hair.
Wow.
So ultimately, all of us white folks, if we're not Sami from the Baltic area, who are indigenous white people, most of us don't know about them, but it's some good learning there. But we all came from earth-loving cultures.
Yeah.
For white people, we have less DNA memory of that because we were the first conquerors. We were the first ones to say, this person is more important than that person. That person is expendable. This person is not. So for us to breathe into that DNA knowing is really important. We have 200,000 years of it. It's in our cells. But it requires a kind of quiet and calm and reflection in order to hear it. It's not going to start speaking to you at the same speed as your AI person. And don't get me started on AI.
We'll leave that for another day.
That's for another day.
Yeah.
Yes. It's about as intelligent as I don't know. That piece of rock is more intelligent than.
Yeah, it's really, I mean, I think I've had a few conversations this year with some lovely people. Hilary Giovanni, who wrote a beautiful book, who is a descendant of white settlers in the US, and she talks about everything around the responsibility of being a descendant of white settlers who benefited from the land grabs and slavery and things, and then
Yes.
actually in relation to gardening, I was having a lovely conversation with Danae, who said something that was really simple, but it was really profound, and it was about our garden space. And if we are privileged enough to have a garden, then we have a responsibility to steward that land for the greater good of the whole. And it's such a simple reframe of how we view ownership in our society, because we're like, I own, my house, my land, I can do with it what I want, because I've worked hard to own this slice of the earth, and therefore it's mine to do what I will with it without any consideration for the whole. And I think there is a lot of conversation about white privilege, but it's actually, just this idea of privilege as a whole. And really, for me, it comes back to this notion of responsibility for the whole, and an awareness of our place in the world and our interconnectedness with everyone and everything, and that we shouldn't wear that responsibility so lightly. And we should, I think that's I think Joanna talks about seeing with fresh eye, with new eyes, doesn't she? And I feel like that's been my journey with my podcast as well, as speaking to all of these amazing people like yourself, learning from all of these teachers, and it just, you begin to look at the world differently and see different possibilities, and understanding the history, like you said, about your pagan roots, understanding the steps that our ancestors took that have led us to where we are now, and honoring that, and then how we can move forward with that knowing and that knowledge of how we've landed here. I think is important. I think there's a move to sort of almost erode some of the history, because it can be heavy and shameful, but it can be empowering when we remember.
And there is such a thing as healthy shame,
Yeah.
right? There is shame that needs to be felt, and it's healthy. I know that one of the things I learned in my studies through Joanna's work and through my work studying particularly Indigenous ways of knowing with Dr. Paul Steves is I was studying the work of the Mi'kmaq elder, Albert Marshall, and he talks about two-eyed seeing. So, yes, Joanna talks about seeing through new eyes, and two-eyed seeing comes at the world from a place of looking at life, looking at what we're doing through the lens of Western knowledge, but then also looking at it through the lens of Indigenous ways of knowing. So what we know is that when the white settlers first came to Turtle Island, they would not have survived, none of them, the first winter, if it hadn't been for the help of the Indigenous people who saw them starving, who saw them dying, and came out of the forest to help them. As the white settlers, came to, get settled along the eastern coast, and then they wanted more land and to bring over more people and started to push the Indigenous people west, sometimes in very, very violent ways. I mean, there was genocide committed during those times.
Yeah.
What was so startlingly incomprehensible to the Indigenous people of Turtle Island, it's like, these people think that they own the land. We are children of the mother. We are part of a living being. We are little brothers and sisters in creation. We are the newest ones here. We are here to learn from the living world. What is this ownership thing? And they lived in communities where maybe, yes, someone had more authority, but because they had more authority didn't mean they had more. Didn't mean they left others to starve. Didn't mean that others suffered. Everybody was responsible for everybody else. And that is the wisdom of going with respect to and reading about and studying what's happening in Indigenous communities.
Yeah, it's such a beautiful thing, and I think it comes back to again this sense of community and this, moving away from this idea of individualism and separation that has become so entrenched. And you mentioned earlier on, this concept of power over that is predominant in the main story of our culture, really, and realizing that there is just another way. I think that's the simple truth of realization, is that it might not be easy to achieve, and there is reform that needs to happen within our culture as a whole, but that there is another way. There is another way that we can show up, and I think the practices that Joanna gives are a foundation for anyone who is looking to see that change in their life and offer us a grounding at this time.
Yeah, and I promised when I said a prayer last night, and I was listening to Spirit, and what I heard was just today when we were together, Fiona, just to let myself open the book and see what wanted to come. So what I've just opened the book is one of the questions I underlined, the question of how could the great turning happen through me? And she says, they say this type of power happens through our choices, through what we say and do and are. And part of this concept that is so liberating is the idea that we don't need to know the outcome.
Yeah.
We don't need to know the outcome. This is an essential part of any creative act. If the idea for something comes to me and I decide too quickly what it is or what the idea is or where it's supposed to go, I might as well just kill it in its tracks. One of our great poets, John Keats, talked to us about the idea of negative capability. And this is an essential for every artist. And are we not all artists in life? The idea that more will come through us, more will come to us if we let ourselves be curious and not know.
Yeah.
So we take appropriate action in the moment, in the day, but we don't necessarily know. I remember in one of my times of great despair, I said, I don't know if anything I've done has mattered. I don't know if anything I've done has made any influence. And she said, how can you even begin to know that?
Yeah.
You can't.
Yeah.
You can't know who you have touched and how you have touched them. And I know, Elizabeth, that you have planted many seeds.
Yeah.
And sometimes seeds don't show up right away. So to let ourselves be seed planters, to let ourselves practice two-eyed seeing, to let ourselves practice active hope and know that we are writing the story still.
I love that. I love the idea of being a seed planter because I think so much of my podcast comes back to a garden, and it's what brought us together as well, was the idea of being a gardener. And to be honest, a gardener is the perfect example of active hope because you never know, like you know, you do all of this thing, all of it with love in your heart, and you know, the idea that hopefully, you know, anything that you plant will germinate and will, you know, grace you with its beauty down the road. Perhaps if you're growing food also, that you will have, you know, a harvest and it will do well. But it is all with hope. You do, you know, you put those seeds in the ground and you hope, and you know, you do what you can to nurture them. Of course, you know, there is, you know, you don't just abandon them. And I think that's the active side of it, isn't it? Is it's like, you know, you constantly tend this practice as you would tend your garden. You tend it with love in your heart. You come back to it. You hold that vision of, you know, if you're wanting to grow tomatoes, that you're going to have those lovely juicy red ripe tomatoes at the end of the season, and your endeavors are going to benefit you and hopefully those around you as well, who will benefit. The insects will benefit, the birds, the plants, everything will benefit from your time and dedication to your practice. And I just think that's it's a beautiful analogy to think of planting seeds. And I know that we're probably coming towards. Oh,
And
sorry.
knowing that when you plant the seed, if you go out the next day and dig down into the earth and go, is it growing? Is it growing? It's never going to grow, right?
Yeah.
It has its own time. In the dark, fertile soil, you say a prayer, you cover up the earth, maybe put some leaves there or something that you know will decay and provide it with energy. And then you just wait for the timing. Each seed has its own timing. And I think that's where we get stuck because we're in such an outcome focus
Yeah.
culture that we plant a seed and then I don't know if it's growing. Is it growing? Oh, I should plant it here. Oh, I shouldn't have said that to that person. I need to take it over here.
Yeah.
Well, you've wrecked the whole.
And I think the other side of that is like what you said there as well, brings back to this idea of co-creation as well with the world. That it's, you know, it's not all about everything that we do. It's about, you know, putting these things into the world and also accepting that there are other energies and other you know, non-human and human, and you know, there's a whole amazing web of life that we are in co-creation with. Like, you know, we can't grow a tomato in isolation. It needs this whole, you know, beautiful synergy of things to happen. And you know, it's, we do need to take responsibility, but also we need to be open for the fact that we need to listen, and we need to be aware that there are other energies in the world that are here to support us and to work with us. And that comes back to what you've said as well about, you know, these beautiful possibilities that we can't even yet imagine can be there, but we can take the first steps. And as I'm
Yes.
sort of talking about co-creation, I want to talk about your amazing husband, who has some absolutely incredible music. You have touched on a little bit, but I want you to share that you are doing an amazing tour throughout the UK and Europe, um, and that, yeah, people, I love listening to Beverly's voice and music, and like you mentioned about art, it just touches you on just this very deep level. he talks a lot about, love and connection, and is but yes, if you if you would like to share, because you are an important part of the tour as well with Beverly. It's not just Beverly, you yourself are going to be an important part of the tour. So if you want to share, so people might have a chance to come and join you and see you.
Yeah, so this tour is really a celebration for us. Glenn and I we began as friends in 1992. We began to collaborate on musical projects, on theater projects. And then, of course, when we came together as a couple, we opened a theater school and we did many residencies and wrote many plays. The goal of which was to build community, was to build people, to bring people together. So this is our first time really coming back together in that collaborative space. So this tour is a celebration of our life. It's a celebration of our love story. It's the celebration of the launching of a new album called Laughter in Summer, which is really a love letter between the two of us. And it's a bit of a bucket list tour. I know some of the listeners know that in 2023, my husband was diagnosed with a major cognitive disorder. Yeah. And we had thought that the tour that we did last year was going to be our last. Many of Glenn's medical team said it would be better if he didn't do tours. He should just stay at home and, do crossword puzzles. And in January, we looked at each other and he said, honey, I know this is supposed to be better for me, but I just don't feel like I'm living. Like, we're not living a life here. There's some people I want to see, some places I want to go while I still have capacity. So the first 3 stops are particular bucket list stops for us. So the first concert is in Edinburgh, and my mother's people came from a little town called Tayport, which is just up there on the Firth of Forth on the North Sea, the Alds. So if any Alds are listening, I'm going to be there and would love to up with some Alds. My grandpa was a Highlander, so we're going to stand on that land and be with that energy, and we hope to hear some pipes and some drums. We have a concert in Edinburgh. Then we're heading over to Dublin, again, where my great-grandmother came from, and many of Glenn's Irish roots are in Ireland. Then we're heading back across to Cardiff to do a show in Wales. That's where my father's people came from and where some of Glenn's mother's people came from. So those are our sort of bucket list stops. And then we're going to go to London. We're going to be in London for quite some time. We hope to see some theater in the West End. And, we're going to meet some people. And we're going up to Manchester and then down into Brussels. Oh. That'll be a 35-day tour for us.
Oh, wow.
So, and the concert is all the music. It's the music of our life, really. So
yeah, which is beautiful. You've got I'll link to it as well. I think you've got an amazing YouTube channel as well. So people, if they have not yet experienced your beautiful music, they can go and have a listen to some of the lovely compositions that you've got there. It's just, I think that I was listening to you and I was thinking about, like, Joanna's work is called The Work That Reconnects. And I was thinking, as you were talking, you were just talking about reconnecting with your roots and your land from your ancestors and reconnecting with the land. And I think that's really, what the whole essence of this conversation has been. It's about us reconnecting, whether that's with, well, it should be both, not with or other, but, with the land that we are on, with the land that our ancestors were from, with each other, with ourselves as well. Like you said, your beautiful practice of just simply sitting with your hand on your heart and saying that you are here. It's, that's so simple and yet so powerful and profound. And yeah, has been absolutely beautiful talking with you again, Elizabeth. As always, you are just a beautiful light. I love that you bring poetry. I love the wisdom that you bring from your incredibly rich life that you have lived alongside many amazing people, but Glenn, especially your partnership and everything that he has brought and birthed into the world during your partnership as well, because it's very much, you know, the co-creation, the space that you have held together. And but is there anything that you would like to just leave the listeners with today, as we wrap up this conversation? I very much hope it won't be our last. I hope that
Oh, no.
we can have another one. But yeah, if there's anything you would like to share with people today to wrap up, that would be lovely.
I would like to break down the word responsibility, right? So it means the ability to respond.
Yeah.
The ability to respond. We all have this ability. It requires that we enter into the pause between impulse and action before we speak or do anything. And we must take this both seriously and lightly, all at the same time. One of my favorite speakers these days is Robin Wall Kimmerer, the Indigenous
Yeah,
teacher, and
beautiful.
she says it is our responsibility every day to meet the world with joy, because despite all the pain we are causing her, the world is still giving us great beauty, food, and loveliness to sell. Well, that's not her phrase. That's another poem. It's a
Yeah.
great one. So we have to be both serious and light at the same time. And I'm going to sing you just a little piece of Laughter in Summer. This is a song about memory. Glenn wrote the music and I wrote the words, and it just goes like
Oh,
this.
beautiful.
Laughter in summer. Mm, how I remember, oh my love, June through September, here with you.
Oh.
So bless you, Fiona, for having me. And I hope I get to see you when I'm across the.
Oh, I hope so too. It's been an absolute pleasure. I always just an honor to speak to you. And thank you so much for your time today. And I hope I will have a links in the show notes for people. So if you want to go and find out more about Elizabeth and the tour with Glenn, and also just find out more about Elizabeth, and I'll have some links to Joanna's work as well for people. And I think they also have a celebration of Joanna's life that is going to be online as well in early October. So there might be an opportunity for people to gather to honour her as well. And I just, I think maybe just that would be, in addition to your beautiful ending, just to say a thank you to Joanna for everything she brought forward into this world, and has the legacy she has created and left us with, the inspiration that she has forged for us, the wisdom that she shared with us that we so desperately need, and we can take forward and hold that vision for a world that perhaps we can't fully imagine, but that we can take the first steps towards, and know that there are other beings and other energies that are co-creating with us something that perhaps we have no idea the possibility of. So my heartfelt thanks to both you, Elizabeth, and to Joanna for everything you have done in your lifetimes and brought forward in this world.
Thank you. Take good care of your heart, and everybody listening, put your hand on your heart and just know, one step at a time, it's going to be okay. Hope is a verb.
Thank you so much for listening to the Nurtured by Nature podcast. I truly hope this conversation has brought some hope and inspiration into your life. I would love to have these messages ripple out across the world. So if you can, please share this episode with your friends, leave a review on your favourite podcast player and make sure you subscribe so you don't miss the next episode. I would love to hear from you, so please feel free to connect with me on the links provided in the podcast description. But most importantly, thank you so much for being a part of this journey with me. But don't forget to simply get out there and enjoy the natural world.